Recently, Tom Taylor, author of Superman, Son of Kal-El, and Nicole Maines, the transgender actress from Supergirl, who's introducing Dreamer into Superman, Son of Kal-El. They had an interview with Adventures in Poor Taste together. Not a whole lot interesting there. I'm not all that interested in Dreamer. I don't think that that character is going to do very well. I don't think there's a whole lot of built-in interest for the character from the TV show. I don't imagine it's going to drive many sales, but they had an interview. And there were a few questions that I thought were very interesting, specifically to Tom Taylor about Superman, Son of Kal-El. They kind of backed up some of my criticisms of Tom Taylor's Superman run, specifically that it seemed like a big cash grab, and they were really fast-forwarding through big events, and they never gave him really the gravity that they needed. If you were going to make Jon Kent's first kiss or coming out to his mom be impactful and important, which it felt like it was supposed to be within the story. And interestingly enough, when Nicole Maines is asked about Dreamer, and this is a small excerpt, it's weird that Nicole Maines seems to get the idea of comic book writing and setting up characters not to fail better than Tom Taylor, who is the actual comic book writer. So I'm definitely going to talk about that. Now let's get into the details of this interview with Tom Taylor and Nicole Maines from Adventures in Poor Taste about Dreamer being introduced into the DC Comics universe in Superman, Son of Kal-El. I'm not really going to talk about that much, specifically with the Tom Taylor stuff, which I'm going to cover first, but he does pretty much back up a lot of my criticisms of the Superman, Son of Kal-El series. This is the only question from AITP that I'm going to cover, but I am going to break up the answer into two parts because I think they're kind of separate and interesting to talk about individually. The question itself is, Tom, I wanted to ask you about Superman, Son of Kal-El. There are so many big beat moments. I think you've done more than most writers do in 50 issues, but in hindsight, is there anything you might have changed or done differently? And this is what Tom Taylor had to say. This is just the first half of the answer, and I'm going to get to the second half here in a second. I'm a writer, you know. There were things that were like, okay, this has to happen by coming out day. And I would have loved a bit longer for John and Jay to be together before the kiss. But having said that, the importance of that moment far outweighs slight pacing issues, you know. When it makes global news and I'm watching it on SNL or whatever, yes, maybe you could have done with maybe 10 more pages. But as far as global, your writer's cap to one side. As you can see by the answer there from Tom Taylor, that was absolutely a publicity stunt. It was a cash grab, and they were willing to sacrifice executing a good story just so they could get out the events and the moments on key certain dates. That is absolutely one of the criticisms myself and others have had about Tom Taylor's Superman, Son of Kal-El, that it felt like a publicity stunt, a cash grab, and it was really just there to get global press, and they certainly got that, so it was effective in that manner. But those moments that you would have expected to be really highlighted and impactful and prioritized as Tom Taylor being the writer of Jon Kent coming out and having his first love and first kiss with Jay Nakamura and coming out to his mom, they were all really truncated. They weren't really executed very well, and they fell, quite frankly, flat in the execution of the book. And you can see that was somewhat by design. They decided to sacrifice execution and good storytelling for the publicity. So it was absolutely a publicity stunt and a cash grab. But he does continue the answer, and this is another criticism I personally have laid on Tom Taylor and Superman, Son of Kal-El. He kind of addresses that here as well. We somehow managed to keep people engaged without actually having John punch anyone for 6 issues. I think that's really important as well. So we have a young bi guy who also is just the sweetest, most empathetic, nurturing guy who doesn't want to hurt anyone. And I think that's far more heroic than somebody punching a supervillain in the face. Now, you can certainly understand where he is coming from with that mindset. I would say that the Dalai Lama is a heroic type figure in like our current day or whatever. You can certainly look at Gandhi and his teachings of nonviolence and stuff like that, or even Martin Luther King in American culture, and these figures who didn't go out there and solve things with their fists, you know, these historical figures that people look up to. And absolutely there's a place for that. But this is a superhero comic book, and I have said that the superheroics and Jon Kent being established as the new Superman hadn't been really going on. It's taken a back seat. Yes, there have been some action moments here and there, but for the most part, it's been about Jon Kent and his relationship with Jay Nakamura. It hasn't really been coherently tied into the actual plot of the story, and that's why it just doesn't feel right. And I think that's why a lot of people, even if they gave this series a shot, don't think it's really a good Superman comic, because it's really not. Whether you want to admit it or not, I mean, Clark Kent is a very nice guy. He has good, upstanding morals, and I don't think he wants to hurt anyone else either. But in the story, he is forced into conflict, and they solve it with action. Normally, Clark Kent Superman overcoming the villain and saving the day. And we're not getting that with Jon Kent in his ascension up to Superman, so he feels like kind of a hollow version of Superman. One of the reasons is this was a publicity stunt, but another reason is that for some reason, Tom Taylor wants to define this Superman as someone who doesn't use physical actions within an action-based storytelling medium to overcome the bad guys and win the day within the story. And I think that's one of the reasons it's been off-putting, and that's certainly been one of the criticisms that I've laid out, and I've gotten a lot of pushback. They're like, oh, what are you talking about? There's tons of action. He's saving the day left and right. I'm like, nah, it doesn't quite feel right for a Superman comic. There are moments here and there, but for the most part, Jon Kent being Superman has taken a back seat to Jon Kent being in a relationship with another male character. And that has certainly been the priority in the emphasis for Tom Taylor's Superman Son of Kal-El story. And you can see why some of these things aren't working. Interestingly enough, it seems like Nicole Maines, the actress from Supergirl, seems to have a better understanding how to get characters over that are LGBTQ and understand that, yes, you want to put some emphasis on those parts of the character, but you still have to be heroic and you still have to put those action-based points into the story. And this is what Adventures in Poor Taste asked Nicole Maines. Superman Son of Kal-El has so many incredible moments, like when Lois hugs John. It was so emotional. And knowing that Dreamer, this trans hero, was coming, I just feel like it could be another important moment. And I don't know if you guys are going for that or trying to hit those beats like that. This is what Nicole Maines, who is not a professional comic book writer, had to say about the introduction of Dreamer into Superman Son of Kal-El. Yeah, it's difficult writing queer heroes because you want to simultaneously do their identities and their struggles and their lives justice, while at the same time, you're not trying to make them a caricature of themselves, or you're trying to put it in a place where it doesn't make sense. That is one of the more common criticisms you will have from modern day comic book readers about a lot of the writers as they're trying to incorporate representation fully into the DC and Marvel universe. I will certainly argue that they've been there for a long time, but they're certainly integrating more representation. And a lot of times they do come off as caricatures. And a lot of times it feels like the interpersonal stuff and them struggling with their LGBTQ identity and the things that they're going with in that part of their lives overshadows actually being a superhero. People don't come to superhero comics to read YA LGBTQ coming of age stories. Now, you can certainly incorporate parts of those types of stories within the DC and Marvel universes, but they can't overshadow, for the most part, the actual superheroics, the reason people actually buy the stories. They don't buy Superman because he's on a journey of self-discovery. For the most part, you buy Superman because he's the Man of Steel. He can leap buildings in a single bound. He's faster than a speeding bullet, and he always saves the day, and he does what's right, and he's willing to fight against evil, no matter what shape it kind of takes. Now, you can certainly incorporate a relationship and parts of that in the background that add conflict and emotional beats to the story itself, but it kind of always needs to be in service of the story, the hero's journey that you're going on. And that's one of the things that Tom Taylor is struggling with. That's one of the things that Vita Ayala is struggling with, and a lot of the other writers at DC and Marvel specifically. So I thought it was interesting that Nicole Maines seems to have a better grasp on superhero comics than a lot of superhero writers. So that's the video today. Tom Taylor goes out there and kind of talks about Superman Son of Kal-El and really backs up a lot of the criticisms I personally have had about his Superman Son of Kal-El run, and a lot of other people out there as well. Superman just isn't working now that Jon Kent has ascended up and they've kind of jettisoned off Clark Kent as Superman. There's a lot of reasons for that. I actually go into this video kind of in depth, why Superman Son of Kal-El, Jon Kent, just really isn't working, why it didn't take off, despite all that wonderful global press that Tom Taylor thought was so important.